Hello, my name is Jack Etkin. I'm here with Mazin Al Nahawi. We are with ICTV in Victoria, British Columbia. We're going to be talking about Palestine and about what we think is the real story of Palestine. Mazin, the first question is, what happened to the Palestinians after Israel was created in 1948?
Here we have, actually 1 year before that, we have the partition plan from the United Nations, which gave 55% of Palestine to the European Jews, and the rest will go to establish a Palestinian state. Now, if we find out about the population during that time. We have 30% only Jews, and the rest are the Arab Palestinian. And these 30% of Jews are mainly newcomer. If you go back to the end of the 19th century, if we go like 1880s, 1890s, the Ottoman made a census. They counted every single person in their territory, and that was for taxation purposes. The percentage of Jews at that time, it was around 3%. So from 1880 until 1947, when the decision to divide Palestine, the plan to divide Palestine, the Jewish population in Palestine increased from 3% to almost 35%. Now, for the indigenous Palestinian, that was like somebody coming to your home, taking more than half of your home, and you have to accept that. And the Palestinian did not accept that new reality, and they fought that, but it ended up with what we have, the creation of the Israeli state in 1948, which the Arab call it a Nakba, a catastrophe. And actually, there is a letter from Einstein describing the events exactly the same as a catastrophe was done by two criminal group, as Einstein himself said, the Zionists and the British.
So, after 1948, I think you said that the Palestinians were given 45% of Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
Israel now constituted 55% of Palestine. But within the next few years, or maybe even less time than that, almost all of what had been Palestine became Israel.
What happened on the ground immediately from day one, it's that the Israeli occupation state did not get only the 55%. From 1948, the Israeli occupation went way beyond that and got almost 75% of historical Palestine. And using the reason that the Arab army tried to wipe out the Israeli state, and that was a complete fabrication from Ben Gurion, who is the first one to use that. But many of us are familiar with Pearl Harbor, the American catastrophe, which a state like the U.S. used to go and drop later nuclear bombs on Japan and killing hundreds of thousands of civilians for one reason, saying that they were protecting themselves. Meanwhile, the Palestinian who lost their home, lost their the way of living, their culture, everything they have no right to defend themselves, and if they do so, they are called terrorists. So I don't know what standard we have here when you take from a human being, his right to be living in his homeland and the right to return to his homeland. And this is the core issue of the Palestinian struggle. We are not allowed to go back to our homeland.
You know, it's very interesting because so much of it is in the way it's presented. You mentioned Pearl Harbor. So, I mean, the real story of Pearl Harbor, who knows what the real story is, but the story we're told is the United States was unprovokedly attacked. And of course they had the right to fight back. That's the story. And yet, as you say, in Palestine, not only were people attacked, but they were actually forced out of their country, and yet we're told that they don't have a right to fight back. I've never really thought about that before, but it's all in the way the story is presented to us, and that's the power of the people who control all the storytelling apparatus, which is the media, our education system, and everything else. So you wanted to talk about Canada's role in much of what happened with the partition of Palestine and then the creation of the State of Israel.
Canada's role is very important. It could be secondary because Canada always worked under the umbrella of the Britain before and later the US. But we have Lester Pearson. He's a very important Canadian politician who was on the head of the commission who took care of the issue of Palestine at that time. And he was the one who insisted on creating a Jewish state in Palestine. We need to remember that during that time, Canada did not allow Jewish refugees to come from Europe to Canada. Even in the harshest time during the Holocaust, Canada, US, Britain locked their door. They did not allow Jews to come to their land. But they want them to go to one only place, Palestine. This is tell you. There is one book by Yves Engler. I think many Canadians should go and read this book. Called it's about Lester Pearson and called "Truth May Hurt," and he talked about his role as a Zionist supporter to help the establishment of the Israeli occupation state in Palestine. And Lester Pearson, it's just an example, but in general, the Canadian government did the work, continue follow on the work of the British imperial policies before, and the same thing with now when we have with the U.S.
I think most Canadians know very little about Lester Pearson, certainly including myself. And we should know just the facts of the matter about what happened in Canada's role at that time. It's also interesting, as you say, that during the Holocaust, Canada and the United States did not, as my understanding is, did not allow Jews to escape from Europe and come to Canada and the United States.
Based on Mackenzie law, actually. Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like the plan existed to force the Jews into what is now called Israel, because that was of benefit to the people who run the world. They wanted to create, as you've called it, an outpost in the Middle East, because the Middle East happened to be where a lot of oil is, a lot of wealth, and a lot of power and influence. And the Western nations wanted to make sure that they had power and influence there in creating a state, which they would then, in many, I mean, it's almost like the Jews are pawns in the game, just as were the Palestinians pawns in the game.
Exactly, and Zionism came to make that a reality. Zionism is the real enemy of Judaism. There is a book, actually, a title book by Alan Hart with this title, because it's permit anti-Semitism. Herzl himself said, anti-Semite nations were going to become our most loyal friend. The idea of scaring...
Herzl was one of the leaders of the Zionist movement.
He is the one who established the whole movement of Zionism, Herzl. And he wrote the book, The Jewish State, and in his diary, you would see a lot of the idea about what happened later. For the issue of Jews don't belong to Europe and don't belong anywhere else except in Palestine, and they are not safe anywhere around the world, and they have to go to Palestine. This is part of the Zionist plan to maintain a demographic majority in Palestine. So if you are a Jewish person living in the US or in Argentina or in India, The Israeli government will tell you it's not safe for you to be there. You should go back to your Jewish state. But now, what about the fact that many of these Jews, especially European, are converted? Has nothing to deal with the so-called original Jews.
You mean over thousands of years,
Exactly.
people converted to Judaism.
Exactly.
There is no historical connection for these people back to Israel.
The other fact is the original Jews were in Palestine. Many of them converted later to Christianity and Islam. So they don't have now any more right to settle in that land because they are not anymore Jews. The whole idea of making a specific part of land as a Jewish state and only for Jewish people, I think it's a racist idea. And it's going to create a situation in the Middle East where you have religious state bordering each other, fighting with each other, while the Western colonial power are taking the oil from underneath that land and using all this trouble just to make their business easier. And not to forget one important thing, for the U.S. business, oil has another partner. It's the weapon industry business in the U.S. These are the two major business in the U.S. So in both cases, if in case the extraction of resource or in case of wars, it's both are profitable for the U.S. empire.
I think everybody knows that the situation in the Middle East in so many respects now is disastrous. How can we move forward from where we are right now in 2014?
I think Canadian and especially American, they have to know very well about the background and to educate themselves about the issue very well. I will bring you a small example. What about if somebody got kicked out of their home and not allow again to come back to their own home? What is the solution for this person? If somebody came to your home, stole your home, took it away from you, what is the solution for you?
To go back to your home.
To go back to your own home and be compensated on the time, maybe especially for the 65 years we have the Palestinian living in refugee camps and in mud and have no identity, lost everything. They need to get back to their home and be compensated about this harsh time they happened to them. Plus, without justice, I don't think there is peace. In that case here, the only justice situation for Palestine is to have a state for all its citizens, regardless of their religion, regardless of their background, regardless of their color, sex, age. It's a state for everybody. When we can talk about this issue and in public and push toward that idea, I think then we can start to see some changes.
Mazin Al Nahawi, thank you very much. And thank you for watching ICTV and what we think is the real story of Palestine.